Composition and Literature instructor, and I'm also the co-chair of the Presidential Search Committee. Thank you very much for attending the forum, and thank you for all of those who are live streaming the event, and also for some people who will be watching the taped interview. It's very important for us to get to know the candidates, but it's also important for the candidates to get to know us. So let me go over the procedures for today's events. I'm going to give a short introduction on our candidate, Dr. Rosie Rimando Chareunsap. She will say a few words. Then we'll have a question and answer period, one in which I hope that we can have more of a conversation, a dialogue. Now the forum is from 1:30 to 2:30, but we also added an additional 30 minutes so that it really goes till 3. And that additional 30 minutes is we want to allow students to ask very specific student-centered questions. As I said, the forum is live streamed and taped. The website is www.scctv.net. We need your input. Your input is anonymous. There are comment sheets that were given to you as you walked into the auditorium. And when you're leaving, if you can go ahead and put them in the, I think it's aquamarine box at the entrance. If you need more time to finish that form, you can bring it to the president's office, just put it in a sealed envelope. We also have online comment forms, so you can go on to the online version and make your comments there. Now, it's very important, there is a cutoff for our comments, and that's for all 3 candidates. That's going to be midnight, Wednesday, 25th of April, so 2 days from now. So whatever comments you want and have, please turn them in by that time. So let me begin. Dr. Rosie Rimando Chareunsap has been serving the students and community of colleagues at South Seattle College since 1998, when she began first as a part-time teacher in the TRIO Upward Bound program. After teaching high school English and social studies in the Seattle Public Schools, she began her full-time career here in 2000 as a student success specialist in the TRIO Educational Talent Search and Upward Bound programs. Since then, Rosie has maintained her focus on serving underrepresented students and increasing the college's capacity to support diverse populations through her leadership work in outreach, advising, a Title III grant, our landmark Anapisi grants, and now at the executive level as South's Vice President of Student Services since 2012. Her career here at South also represents the many partnerships and collaborations she has formed across the institution, including partnering with faculty, PIO, advancement, instructional leadership, as well as building strong connections within the Student Services Division. Rosie is also a recognized collaborative leader and colleague across the Seattle district. Currently, she is lending her leadership in the citywide effort to implement Mayor Jenny Durkin's ambitious Seattle Promise program, which is modeled after South's and our foundation's 13th year program by representing the colleges in this effort and serving on the city's design team to implement the work. In addition to her leadership at South and locally, Rosie has been a leader on a statewide level, serving on the executive committee of the Washington State Student Services Commission, where she has emphasized the focus on equity across our system by leading statewide efforts supporting Dreamer students and other system-wide professional development focusing on equity approaches in student affairs. Nationally, Rosie is recognized for her leadership and commitment to equity, having been invited to speak on numerous occasions about her experiences in Guided Pathways leadership and weaving equity into that work, as well as about her experiences as a woman of color in higher education leadership. She was nominated twice for the prestigious Aspen Presidential Fellowship Program by leaders of National Community College Partnership organizations. Rosie is an otter through and through, and also a proud WSU Coug, though her colleagues would remind her that one of her degrees is also from a major public university in Seattle as well. Most importantly, Rosie is a dedicated family woman, the proud partner of a 2-time South graduate AA and BAS, mother of 1 child care center preschool graduate, and another currently in the daycare program. She has deep roots, as well as many branches and leaves here at South. I give you Dr. Rosie Rimando Chareunsap.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for spending your afternoon here. Thank you to members of our community for coming to campus for this little event here. Thank you to SECTV, Rich and Dean, for setting this up for us, and to those of you watching at home. Among them, I think, is probably some of my family and friends as well. Thank you for spending time watching this. I promise not to embarrass you. And yes, thank you to the committee for the hard work that you've put into the process so far. I am humbled, I am honored, I am I'm somewhat in disbelief to stand in front of you in this role and talking to you from this, but I stand here ready. Ready to lead and ready to field your questions today. As my biography says, I'm proud otter. Actually, I went to Ordway Elementary School when we were the Ordway Otters, and so I was born to be at South and to be an otter, I think. I've spent 18 years here, growing my career and helping to build this institution. I am the daughter of an immigrant family. My father was a Navy veteran, and when he retired, he was at Olympic College pursuing his degree on the GI Bill at the same time that my big brother was enrolled at Olympic College getting his AA. So I remember the stories growing up about what it was like to accidentally take a couple classes with our dad in it. And so the community college has been a part of my family and who I am for many years. I grew up on bases. I grew up in Charleston, South Carolina, in or near military bases. And growing up a child of the South, moving to the Pacific Northwest for me was a big transition. But at each step of the way, it really developed who I would become eventually as an educator and as a leader, and who I stand before you today. I first wanted to be a high school teacher, really because I didn't know that careers in community colleges existed. I thought about wanting to impact, especially students of color who, unlike me, weren't able to pursue paths to higher education. When I went to WSU as an undergrad, I was working on my secondary education certification and was fully committed to that path as the way that I would build my career, when in the summer I found a job working for Upward Bounds, which really opened the doors to this whole career that can happen inside a community college, but also within student affairs, that I could still impact students of color and students who were underrepresented in higher ed in ways that were really positive and transformative. I think that the experience that I have with my partner, having done his AA here and later the Bachelor of Applied Science program as well, to see him struggle, to see him succeed, and to see him struggle some more, I think brought home the challenges of our institution every night. And it gave me a very, very keen perspective on what I wanted to do as a leader at the institution and how I wanted to change students' experiences for the better and strengthen the work that our faculty and staff do as well to serve students. And so I've spent the last 6 years in executive leadership as the VP of Student Services, really trying to do right by my husband and the experiences that he had here, as well as all those other students that we see on a day-to-day basis who struggle, who come with an immense amount of motivation and drive, but who, in many ways, for the faults of how we're designed, we don't adequately serve them through the many other barriers and factors that they navigate through their lives, find it difficult to stay and be successful. I've really dedicated the last 6 years in executive leadership to leading a division in a way that was going to change the way we do that for the better. Before I turn it over to you for questions and for hopefully a good conversation today, I you know that I want to be president. I was going to say, I'm going to be president of South, but you knew that because I'm here and because I applied. But I really believe I'm best fit to be our next president because one, I believe I am South. Like I said, I've spent 18 years here. I've had a direct impact in that time on who we are as a college and how we serve people. I think that you could look around and identify things that are meaningful about what we do well at South, and I think I can point out to you ways that I might have positively impacted that and helped bring about some good change about how we serve students and who we are. I also believe that South is me. I mean, South is in my family. My kids are here. It's not insignificant that the very first classroom and educational experiences my children are having are here at this college. Not just in the classroom with our teachers, but also walking around, visiting the different events, interacting with the children of our students, with your children. But South is me in so many ways. I can't even begin to try to list them. But this is really where I belong and where I've invested in the long term and where I hope to stay in the long term. I also know where we've come from and I know where we're heading. I know it's going to be rough roads. We're in rough roads now and we're heading for rough roads ahead, and I am still here chasing this opportunity, running towards those challenges, ready to lead us in that direction together. So with that, I will turn it over to questions from you, and Bob.
So now we're going into the question and answer period. The way it'll work is myself and Johnny we have wireless microphones. So if you just raise your hand, we'll get a microphone to you. And because I am the MC, I get to ask Rosie the first question. And the first question is, you answered it a little bit, but I'd like to try to be a little more specific. What is it about South that attracts you to be here? I mean, I assume that you could have applied at many other schools for various positions, including president, but this is the one that you applied. So what is it about South?
I think the one-word answer is people, the people of South. I think the students are really why I started working here in the first place, but the colleagues and the relationships that I've built over the years and with many of you in this room are really why I've stayed. They say that you don't ever really quit a job, you quit a boss or you quit an organization. And I have only ever wanted to continually renew my commitment to South. I don't stay here because of the commute. I live in Shoreline, and I have the whole 18 years and have done that commute. And every time somebody reacts to that and wants to tell me how awful my commute is, as if I didn't know, I always say the same thing. As long as the job is worth the drive, it will never bother me. And to this day, after 18 years, it hasn't been an issue. Well, it's an issue. It's an issue, but I mean, it hasn't sent me running. I think the other reason I chose this job, and I think I should be clear, this is the only presidential job I'm applying for. And I know there's other openings in the system, but I want you to know that this is the only job, the only presidential position that I'm applying for. And because I really believe in where we're heading, I believe, I've been a part of where we've come from, but I really believe in where we're headed. I think we're on the right track with a lot of the ways that we have focused in recent years. And like I said, because of the work that people are doing, you all are doing together to get us there, even though we're in some tough times right now in terms of the budget, these are all the reasons why I want to stay here.
Hello. This is the same question I've asked other people. So, recently, you hear me? Okay. We had some blindsides happen with staff. In other words, people would come to work and they were told they don't work here anymore. So there were some hard things that happened, let's say the last 6 months to a year. What would you do about morale among staff who are, and some faculty, kind of apoplectic about this?
Thanks, Sandy. That was a good question. I'm not sure if the mic picked it up for the folks at home, but she asked about the morale at South. And it's something I've been thinking a lot about, and it would be one of the top priorities. I would say my top priorities, if I were to move into the role, would be budget, equity, and people. And to the extent that where we're coming off, where when this person starts July 1st, we will have made some more tough budgetary decisions, which probably would include some personnel decisions. We would be adjusting to major cuts, and morale is already very at risk, I would say, in some areas. And I think that what I would want to do is focus on the people first, that we need to build a sense of security and stabilization around the environment so that people aren't coming to work in fear, as you described someone experiencing. I use the analogy, and so I'm sorry, some of you I've talked with before, you're gonna get so sick of this later, but it works. I use it over and over again because it works. But when I think of the budget reductions and the cuts that we have to make, I think about it in terms of pruning a tree. I have this dwarf Japanese maple in front of my house that was beautiful when we bought the house 5 years ago, 6 years ago now, and it became overgrown, and I realized I needed to do something about the tree because it was just, it had lost its shape, it lost its purpose. And researching a little bit about this, because I'm not a botanist, I learned that you couldn't just hack away at it. You couldn't just hack to clean it up. That you had to be thoughtful about the pruning and prune in the right places and in the right ways to encourage growth in particular directions. And you also you couldn't over prune, because if you over prune, then you harm the overall health of the tree. If you don't prune, then you're just gonna get this messy monster that I had at our front door. But that once you do the pruning, once you get to that right level of pruning and you prune in the right direction, then you have to fertilize and water the tree so that it survives the cuts. You have to care for the system of the tree to make sure that it can thrive to the point of regeneration. And I think that that's the pivotal point that we're heading into as a college, that we're going to have to really focus on our greatest asset, which is our people, our faculty, our staff, those of us who are here to care for morale, one, but also care for people's sort of well-being and sense of thriving in a way that keeps people invested in the long run, that doesn't leave people cynical about their job or feeling like they're in a toxic place. And so I think I would definitely want to care for people, and I think I would do that in a number of ways. I think there are a lot of top-down things that a president can do in terms of shifting the culture and shifting how we find ways to interact with one another. And so building that culture, the social aspect of that back up, but also being accessible and approachable by individuals who want to talk about their concerns and utilize their voice in ways that can either speak for themselves or speak for others, I think would be really important for me to do as well in that role. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Rosie.
Hi, Joyce.
So if you were put into this position as president of this institution, you're going to see underneath some of those carpet corners that maybe you haven't seen under before. And you might see some things that you love and you want to see flourish, and some things that you're going to want to change. Part of any president's opportunity is to figure out what kind of changes really make sense. So can you talk a little bit about how you go about change and what's important about how you would go about a future change, about things that you may see that other people may not have yet that needs to be changed?
For some reason, the TV show Fixer Upper came to mind, and is there shiplap under there? I can appreciate that because as the internal candidate, I might know what's under the carpet already, or I might think I know what's under the carpet already. And I think part of my role in the first couple of months is to, utilize the information that I already have accumulated about the institution, where our issues are and where I think the problems are. And to assess those assumptions and see, are they real? Are they true? Is what I think is wrong really what's wrong? And I only have a limited view. Granted, I'm at the executive level and I'm at cabinet, but I still have the view from student services of what I think I see out there. As president, I would have the benefit of seeing it 360, seeing things from all the way around and working to understand them. But I think I would first adjust my vantage point to make sure that I'm seeing things from the president's position in that 360 view versus just what I might see now as the VP of Student Services. But then if I know that there are issues and there are known solutions at hand, I think I would really urge us to accelerate towards those known solutions, where sometimes there are problems that are sitting there and everyone in the room knows what the solution is, but it just takes somebody to drive that towards decision and make the change or make the shift or what have you. And I think I would look for those opportunities and drive those decisions forward when it's already something that is widely agreed upon. In terms of other types of change, I think my approach would be to, again, lift up the carpet, study what it is that I think I see, check my assumptions with others, and work to understand what work has already been done, why is the carpet there, why did we put the carpet over the linoleum in the first place, ask some of those historical questions, but then also to look forward at where we're heading in terms of our direction, and decide how does this or does this not fit in with the direction we're heading, and then use that opportunity to have some of the difficult conversations around whether or not to initiate a change there. I think that change for the sake of change wouldn't be my approach, but I believe that change for the sake of pursuing a clear direction is the approach that I would lead from and engage people around as well. So I could give some examples maybe as we talk further, but that's initially how I respond to that.
Good afternoon, how are you? Can you hear me?
There you are, hi.
I've been around a little bit longer than you, and new people are coming on the campus at a very good rate, and the new people that are coming on the campus at a very good rate are very diverse, but they're new people. The leadership, the president will have a person reporting to them once that person gets hired that will be able to advise and do some training and reach out to new staff, because the new staff may bring whatever paradigms, whatever they bring to this campus. But if we're on a journey to move the campus more toward diversity, equity, and inclusion, how would you work with that new staff person to make sure people who've been here for a while and some of the new people who are coming aboard fall in line with our mission and our vision?
So you're referring to the Associate Vice President for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion?
Absolutely.
All right. Full disclosure, had I been at another point in my career, that would have been my dream job. I would have loved to lead the institution in that way. And to borrow something that I heard, I will not take credit for this, but I'm a poor academic in that I can't remember who said it, so I can't get proper credit. But I heard another colleague say at one of our guided pathways things across the nation, as a president, I want to be the chief diversity and equity officer. In other words, I don't want to usurp that person's role, but what I should be as a president is the chief representative of what leadership with equity and diversity as a forefront value looks like. And so to that end, because this is an area of passion for me, I would really want to partner with this person to identify what's the short-term work that we'd want to do in the next several months together. We would probably be starting at the same time. And so there's an opportunity for me to hit the ground running with this person and say, what can I do to lead as a president that would better enable the work that you will want to grow and develop into? So how can I pave the path for this person? I think that would be a way that I would start. But just like cabinet works with the president closely on decisions, having this person and this role at the cabinet level will be hugely important, because that means that it's not just a matter, it's literally someone's job to always be thinking about and challenging our decisions and our conversations from the perspective of equity, from the perspective of social justice and diversity. And to have that is incredibly exciting. Whether I'm in the president role or if I'm in the VP role when that person starts, I'm going to be super excited to work with this person. But as president, I would really see this person as really key in creating some shifts in how we do things. Sometimes how we do things is a matter of tradition and stagnation, and not necessarily a matter of value and importance. And so teasing those apart, what can we do better? Because we're only doing it that way because we've been doing it that way. versus what are the things that we do well that we want to uphold and continue to uphold. And I think that's where, when I think about a lot of the new folks that have come to the campus over the past couple of years, who are diverse and come with a lot of knowledge and insight to bring into these conversations, that's where I think that we can leverage both what the insight and the knowledge that they bring in that's fresh to the institution, and the long existing knowledge, insight, and wisdom that we have from our colleagues who've been deep in the work for many, many years. And that's where they can come together to really help define how we shift as an institution. So whatever happens in this process, we're in a really interesting moment for this work, because we're hiring a new president, a new AVP for EDI, the acronyms, holy cow, a new president, and we have new folks coming in, and we're in this budget crisis where we're gonna have to remake ourselves in some way. The South we will be a year from now, 2 years from now, will be remarkably different, and I argue remarkably better, if we do it right, than who we are today, simply because we will have no other choice but to get better at what we do and how we do it. So, and that we will be much more sophisticated in how we answer questions around equity gaps, and how we are prepared to serve students from diverse populations well and consistently well. We will be so much better at it then if we really stay the course that we've set for ourselves now with these types of priorities.
Hi, Rosie. A great deal of the work that a president does is not here on campus, but is external. It's engaging in things like representing us in the legislature, at fundraising, at hobnobbing, and spending lots of time off campus being South for other people as opposed to being South for us. I'm curious about what experience you have representing the college externally, and where you don't have the experience, what experiences you have that will support you in making that transition.
I think that many times that role that a president takes out there in representing the college is really telling the story of who we are. And I really believe in the story of who we are. And as I said, I really feel like I've been a part of the story of who we are. And when I say who we are, I don't just mean who we are as colleagues who work together, but who we are as in terms of the community that we serve, the partnerships we have, the students, who we are. And I think that one of the things that I can really do, I feel like I'm a good, strong communicator, and I believe that I could use that skill to tell our story well. You know, we need to tell our story to our legislators, to our community partners, to prospective students, to anyone who will listen, really, because South for too long has been the best kept secret in Seattle, and we have really, we're this hidden jewel on a hill that takes a goat hill to get to. People often say, I mean, our tagline might as well be South Seattle Community College. I didn't know that there was a college up there. You know, that's often what I've heard from colleagues in the community. I know I just accidentally said South Seattle Community College. That's still who we are. I think that where I haven't been in the role of directly advocating with legislators, the benefit of working in the district is that there are 2 other presidents, a chancellor, and we have a legislative liaison, Steve Leahy. And so I would be, as the new president, would be able to jump right into that existing network and those existing pathways to get out there and to connect with people and to start making my own relationships with our legislators. You know, some of the best relationships we have because of the students. The student government and our TRIO programs really bring a lot of legislators to campus for a lot of different reasons. And so really riding the coattails of the great work that our students already do to make those connections directly myself, I think would be important. I would make myself unforgettable to a legislator, and the story of South unforgettable to a legislator. And I think that most folks, once they get to campus and set foot on our campus and meet you and meet our students, they know why this place is special and why it is unique. And I feel that at that point it becomes easier to build support once we can get folks engaged with people directly. So I think that's where I would really, and you know, the same goes for fundraising. I think I've worked with the foundation to help implement 13th Year back when it was new through the years, but also have prided myself in being a good partner to our foundation folks and in the fundraising work that they do and in helping them to tell the story of South to potential funders. And so I think being a part of that, continuing to be a part of that narrative would be really important to me as well. And I think that I could really do that with passion and with authenticity and yeah. Quiet between questions.
Hello, Rosie. My name is Lucia Kasai. I met with you during the complaint process.
Hi, Lucia.
How are you doing?
Good.
It's good to see you again.
You too.
And I just want to know your intake on the hospitality program and the swastika being taught, part of diversity and tourism.
Thank you, Lucia. I think Lucia is a former student of South, and I hesitate to share too much about your specific case without your permission, but I'll respond.
No, you're more than welcome to share.
Okay. So there was a case where an instructor had utilized a swastika in the course of a lesson, and it led to, I don't want to characterize your experience out of turn, but it led to students feeling targeted and harmed, and in a negative way, and in a way that that students didn't feel comfortable staying at South. And I think that one of the lessons that I learned through that process, me and my role at that point was as the Student Services VP, and I was working with our VP of Instruction and our president to address how that was handled through the complaint process. My role in that process was to help build a plan for what could happen next for students to persist if that were their choice. I think your question is about how I feel about a swastika being used in the classroom. I think that anytime we try to teach about elements of history that are painful and triggering, I think that they need and should be done with care and with good training. It's not that we don't teach the history that we have, but that if we're going to be utilizing visual images, touching on topics that are painful and that are directly painful for people for the reasons that they might personally identify with the issue, I think that we have to do so in a way where people are really adequately trained to do that well and to be able to address things as they come up in the classroom, including students feeling uncomfortable, directly and compassionately. I think that there are always ways to do things better, and that I take out of your experience, Lucia, and other students' experience, I always take away questions and ideas for how the institution can do right by students in other situations. But yeah, does that answer your question?
Not really, no. I think when I was going through the complaint process with you, Rosie, I thought a lot of things you did was very insincere, and I'll tell you why. One thing I would have to say is when I did address it with you, Peter Lawrence, Linda Manning, and maybe your department did not give me a fair evaluation. They evaluated a whole different year of class. I felt like you guys were protecting the instructor and allowing a racist instructor to set the standard for the education here in a diversity and tourism class. I did not feel like I was treated with respect and dignity. It was the most unauthentic, completely demoralizing experience I've ever had. And the whole diversity department over there is not doing very well. I had someone else in my classroom being sexually harassed, and that person was later on hired in that department. She filed, I'm not gonna say her name, she filed with you. And that person was hired to be in her area. She was terrified.
Lucia, there's nothing I can say in this moment or in this venue that can take away the pain that you've experienced or that I've caused you.
I would like for all students to have a fair evaluation when racism happens on this campus. And I know the school is gonna help in any way from what I've seen, the administration here will help protect those instructors. I've seen it, it affected my education. I do not have my degree. I know you guys put something in place, but coming back here and being so completely disregarded by you, by Peter Lords, by Linda Manning, was the most horrible thing I've ever went through. I have 3 children. I hate to come in here and say this to you, but I have no choice because I know there's more here and there's a lot of staff here that have been here for a long time that continue to do this. The hospitality program, it is not for people of color. It is not for someone like me, like a refugee. It is very clear. And then when that student gave the Hail Hitler salute in that class, you guys went ahead and interviewed a whole year, another year of class, never went back to give me my fair evaluation of that class. It was a cover-up.
I think that this obviously is very personal, and this is something that we can continue to discuss in a more private venue. But we're here to learn about our candidate, and I would like us to go ahead and move along.
I'm perfectly fine for anybody sharing my story. She said, share the story, I shared it.
Any other questions?
I think it's really important for us to all take a breath for a moment. I saw where the student is coming from, and yet I'm understanding your role right now as someone who's being interviewed for this position. And I'm not minimizing the student's experience, and I'd like to hold that, that I hope that you're okay in moving forward.
I am. These issues are not easy. Leading through these is not easy, and pain is real, and perspective is reality, and experiences are real. And I know that as much as I hope to always be effective in every decision I've made, I know that I've always had my own limitations in what I've been able to impact, and I wouldn't ever claim to everybody in this room that I've done right by every single person that's crossed my path with a concern. I wish that I could say that I have. You find the person who says that they can have, and you make that person your president. No, please. I appreciate where that comes from, but I also, I share that moment with that student, and so thank you, Sol.
Just for those who are watching, my name is Sol Mendez. I'm the program manager for the Center for Equity, Inclusion, and Diversity. My question is, I've noticed that within the social justice work that we do within Washington State, some of us feel that we are at a level that we understand what equity is, and therefore we act on what we think it is. And I heard you earlier mention about training in regards to helping folk move within an equity practice. And my question is more targeted toward how do you feel you can support people around you who may think that they're coming, that they have an equitable practice, but in actuality, their practice is more theory-based and not practice?
$1 million question. Isn't that what we're hiring the AVP for? That's a great question, Sol, and thank you. I believe when it comes to work around equity, the one thing that I know to be true is that I know nothing. That I do constantly, I might think I know what the right thing is to do in the moment based on my convictions, my perspective on a situation, but doing equity work, being focused and really engaging means that I'm constantly putting a critically analytic eye on my own thoughts and assumptions, as well as everybody in the room. It's always more fun to put it on other people, to put that critical lens on somebody else and pinpoint what that person could be doing better. But as we see today, that it is continually a personal and sometimes painful process to be constantly self-evaluative in the work. And the other thing I know to be true working in a community college is that we try to work for and serve students where they are. And I believe the same when it comes to developing up our equity intelligence, if you will, is that we have to work with one another where we are and work to bring people, just to help people continually progress in their understanding and approaches to issues of equity, issues of diversity, issues of inclusion. And if we can hold that to be true, not that everybody should be here, there are days I come to work and I hear an issue and I think, dang it, if we were all here, this wouldn't be a problem. But who am I to say that here is where we should all be? We are all coming into this work from different places, and the humility that I have learned and that I have seen others employ when we work around difficult issues of equity, difficult issues of diversity, is inspiring to me and reminds me that humility is where we should start from, and responding to one another with where they are is the starting point. But then with that, continual and unrelenting drive to be better all the time. I think that has to follow, because we can get comfortable with who everybody is. I can admit, like, okay, that person's about, you know, here on my scale, and that person's about there on my scale. I mean, that's all totally subjective. But if I can recognize that that everybody's coming at it from a different place, and needing different types of development and different types of building on their understanding, and then also push us all to keep doing that better, I think that's where I would be successful as a leader around equity issues. So, yeah.
Hi, Rosie.
Hi, Jesse.
Over here.
That's
So,
great. Sorry.
Jesse Knappenberger, Dean of Student Achievement. A lot of times a question that is common for an incoming person would be, what would you do to get to know the campus and get to know the culture? Given your experience and having a lot of knowledge of those things, I think the reverse of my question is, what things would you do to make sure you don't fall into blind spots, or would give you the opportunity to have a fresh perspective that a new person coming in might have to identify issues that sometimes can be hard for someone who's been at an institution for a long time to see?
That's a great question. I was thinking about that earlier when I was talking about wanting to shift from just being from having the awareness that I have seen things from, even though I'm at the executive level, I see things from where I sit, which is VP of Student Services. And coming at the president level, I would be able to gain more of that 360 view. I think I would both be able to come in with a good understanding of who we are, but I would also want to spend time in, not that they're blind spots, but there are many areas of a college where I don't have direct oversight or relationships. I have a lot of relationships across campus, but in terms of direct working, I'd want to go and spend time in those areas that I have less experience in, and that includes different areas of instruction, that includes different areas of admin services and other functions across campus. And I think I would want to not assume that just because I've been here 18 years that I know the college inside and out. I know the college where I've been inside and out, but I don't know the college where so-and-so has been inside and out, or this person has been inside and out. And I would want to get to know South almost all over again. So I would actually still come back in, try to be a little bit of an outsider and try to learn from folks. Just today already, sitting with the different groups, I've sat with four different groups so far, and even though they're folks that I know, folks that people have been saying to me, I'm so-and-so, you know that, but here's what I do, and then they'll give me this nice description of what they do here. And it's so wonderful to engage with people that I see in meetings or I see across campus all the time, but to hear them talk in their own words about what they do. So I think I would definitely want to take that approach into it as a new president. I think as a president, there's a lot of risk for blind spots because you're sitting at the president level that you don't really get into a lot of the day-to-day work. And I think having the experience of worked through many different levels of the institution, I would take that intentionality to try to make sure that I am, I don't have to know the ins and outs of every single department, but if I can go and study what it looks like to, in this department for a day or in that department for a day and really get to know areas better, I think that would be a really nice way to start. And a good way for me, because I would be in a role to need to reintroduce myself to the campus as the president. And it would be a good opportunity for me to do that with folks who might only be used to me in my previous roles before this one.
Hi, Rosie. Yuki. Hi. For those who don't know me, I'm Yuki Tamuran from business office. So far you have mentioned about budget cut and all that stuff, and we obviously know that we have budget going down and the grant it's hard to get, it's not really sustainable. So I have a question. My first question to you is that, do you have any alternative plans to get funding sources other than grant, state fund, or donation funding?
Bring in funding sources other than grants, state, or like play the lotto? Yeah, so thinking about our mix, we have increasingly a mix. I think what's going to be really interesting is what happens with the Seattle Promise program. This is a source of funding that is totally new to us as an institution, but it's where the city is, the mayor's plan is to bring city money in to fund tuition and operations to support high school graduates from across the city to come to the Seattle colleges. That's going to bring us revenue in two ways. One, it's going to bring us the tuition dollars that will come with the students that don't qualify for financial aid. Three ways, actually. Two, it's going to bring us the staffing and overhead funds to deploy the services for those students and overhead money to support the infrastructure to provide those services. And three, it is going to generate the FTEs that they bring will also generate dollars. So it's this interesting, we don't really have a good sense. We've been looking at the financial modeling for this from the city's perspective. The city is right now figuring out how are we going to fund this. It's included in the levy for now. They're also talking about, it's also current fund out of the sweetened beverage tax, and they're looking at philanthropic big asks in that going in that direction as well. But we haven't really done an evaluation yet internally to be what the potential outlay will be for us financially. I'm looking at Corinne. She did some back of the napkin numbers and came up with a huge figure that it could bring us if we get all 400 of these potential students that enrolled here in our institution. But the thought of those three different types of funds coming in through this one project is really new and unique for us. We have not done anything like this before. And so what I would like to do is to sit down and look at, now we're kind of in a bit of a fray of trying to figure out how it's even going to get funded at the city level, but assuming in good faith that it gets funded as the mayor plans for it to be, what would really be great next is that if we could sit down and look at the financial modeling to say, if we brought in this many students, what would that mean for us in terms of our FTE allocation and in terms of the tuition generation, in addition to the staff monies that are there. So there is a big opportunity here. I think that's one. What I'm curious about is what type of synergy does a model like this create for other types of very unique funding. This is totally out of the box type of funding that we haven't considered in the past. So what synergy and interest could this pique for other types of unique funding scenarios like this? But I'm really hopeful that this really pans out. We know the students are there. We know that the interest and the need is there. And so now it's a matter of working closely with the city to make sure that the city's funding model comes together so that this thing can really take off and live out that vision that she has set.
And I have one more question.
Please.
I'm sorry, thank you. So a couple weeks ago, we met here at the budget kickoff meeting, and if my memory serves right, that we actually gave money last year to district office, but we're coming getting money back, so we're getting service back. That was my understanding from the
any opportunity for presidents to advocate that there's some redundant job that all campus have and send back to the district office responsibility? So we'll have more time to serve and plan a program for our own campus.
It's really intriguing, a question around, can we look at the redundant functions that exist on the campus and send them back to the district? I'm sure that folks at the district are either watching this or will be watching the recording, so I hope you're taking notes. I think that's really interesting. I think that's also a part of the ASI, the Achieving System Integration conversation, is to look at what functions exist where does it make sense, and this is where the chancellors talked about what makes sense to integrate and what makes sense to differentiate. And I think that the further we take this, we're kind of at the first round of ASI, implementing ASI decisions. And I think that as we pursue and stay on this path, we will work to uncover more opportunities to better align and to shift either to district or to campuses in ways hopefully that will that will help us stabilize our financial model a bit more moving forward. But I'm definitely open to what those conversations look like. I've been involved in the ASI conversation from the beginning because I represented South on the initial team that looked at the district operations, and so I was in some of those early conversations around which functions live at campus, which functions live at district, which ones are duplicative, and which ones should be put in either place. And so I would really look forward to staying in that conversation and pushing for that, because as president, we'll also be looking out for, as Pete does now, as Gary did before, we're also looking out for our own, what it means for our own financial environment in some of these shifts.
Hi, Rosie.
Hi, Dan.
Just a question. You mentioned the USA, the Student Government Association, earlier. Just wondering, how would you solicit and incorporate student perspective, student concerns, and student voice in discussions as you lead the efforts of the college to benefit students?
You know, the students were the first reason why I came into this field of work in the first place. And one of the things that I really, well, first of all, the president and the USA president, the student government president, already have this great built-in relationship. They meet monthly, I believe, and they get to interact together. What I would want to do is open that up a bit more. And the president and the vice president of student services already do go to quarterly USA meetings and hear from students. And I think there are other ways to open up those lines of communications further. I think that the USA, the student government body, has been really active and they've been good advocates for students, and they've been out there and vocal. And I think that to the extent that we can continue that level of student voice in general is important, but also I want to be a president that students feel they can easily approach. I want to be approachable for students in that way, and I think part of that will be finding ways to connect with them beyond those two mechanisms, beyond the monthly one-on-one meetings, beyond the quarterly visits, but to find other opportunities. One of the things that we used to do that I thought was really, really cool was USA would host a Meet the President lunch for students. And students would come to Alki, and I remember I went a couple of times with Gary and others, and we would go and sit and have lunch with students in general, and anybody could come, not just the USA officers, but other students could come as well to engage and ask questions and to talk about what the experiences were. And those were huge, even for me as a VP, to be able to hear from students over lunch about how they're experiencing different departments within my area. It was really useful for me then, and I think that the more we can do those types of easily accessible, unintimidating, formal and informal opportunities to engage with students, I think would be really good work, early work for me as a new president in the role, and I think would be a priority early on. And I think the same goes for engaging with faculty and staff, being approachable, finding opportunities and creating spaces where people can come and where I can hear directly from people about how they're experiencing the college, and leadership, I think are going to be important too.
Hi, Rosie.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes, there you are.
So I feel that, you know, you have been a point here at Cal College where we have internal edge for a lot of other candidates, external, which is good. Yeah, sometimes it's good to have that vision from inside because you know things inside out versus somebody who comes in new and takes them time to figure out what's going on. But my question to you is, Jack, and I asked this to other candidates as well, is about enrollments, and we worry about enrollments. What do you plan on, how do you see enrollments going up, increasing from a strategic point of view? And how would you plan on increasing enrollments here, which have been a big question mark, especially when it comes to revenue and also not canceling classes and making sure that classes run so that students are catered in a proper way, and we inform students, you know, that this classes should run, it should be canceled. So it's important, it's a twofold question, but it leads to enrollments, definitely, you know, that how can we plan on that? And then secondly, run our classes so that students are catered and they get education, that's what they're here for. Thank you.
Thanks. Enrollments, you know, there are lots of indicators, I've talked about this in earlier groups today as well, but there's lots of indicators that show us that enrollment is, in community colleges, isn't going to be going up. We saw the peak of high school graduates several years ago, and I believe we've been in a steady decline since then. We know that the economy is improved, and so adults are choosing to enroll at lower rates. So there's a couple of major societal factors that are impacting our ability to capture new enrollments. What I really believe that where the shortest route to strengthening our enrollments is really in the students we already have, in retention, in keeping students. And where we, historically, community colleges in South, definitely being guilty of this as well, is when we hit enrollment times, we think of enrollment as this thing this spigot we can just open and close. Well, enrollments are down, we gotta open the spigot and get more people in. And if that were the case, we would just leave the spigot wide open the whole time, because that's how our funding model is built. But that's not the case, and yet that's how we treat it whenever we come to enrollment downturns, as if we just put, you know, it's to take Ty and team off the hook. It's not always about doing more marketing. It's not always about, you know, Derek Reddick's doing twice as many more fairs. I mean, that will certainly could reach more people, but it doesn't necessarily change the way people are making decisions. And so, to that end, I really believe the shortest route to strengthening our enrollment is through keeping the people that we have. You know, I talk about this, you know, I've talked about this in other venues here, but, you know, our 22% completion rate should make everyone shrink in their seat a little, right? We should all feel a little bit uncomfortable with the fact that that's our rate. 1 out of 5 students. If we could capture another 1 out of 5 students and get that to 2 out of 5 students, 40%, that could do a lot for our enrollment. But if we strive for that 5 out of 5, then we really can make some strides. But the challenge with that, and I think the reason why I think we'll make this shift. We're starting to make this shift now. Assuming that enrollment has to come from new students means that other people have to change what they're doing. Students have to choose to come here. Students have to pick South over somewhere else. But to change, but to capture and better retain students means that we have to change what we're doing. And that's a harder, I mean, that's human nature, right? It's let the other person change. I'm doing things well, I'm successful, I should get to stay the same. But we're being successful with that 1 out of 5, not with the other 4. And so what can we do to change how we operate, how we're structured, how we serve, so that, you know, those other 4 have a chance here as well. So I think that, and that's a shift, and that really ties in with, we talk about this a lot in Guided Pathways, and this also does relate to the question of the equity achievement gaps that we have as well. But shifting that, we are really at a pivotal point where we will be left behind and trampled by the competition if we don't truly embrace the concept that it's not about making the student college, it's no longer about making the student college ready, it's about making the college student ready. I talked earlier about needing to support students where they're at, serve students where they're at when they come in. That means that we have to make some fundamental shifts to get there. And it's going to be a little painful because it's going to mean many of us are changing the way we do things, but it's going to be the necessary thing we do to survive and thrive through not only this downturn, but all the future downturns that will come, because this will keep happening with enrollment. We will keep having these conversations on and off over the years. And so we will continually have to reinvent ourselves in positive ways to be more responsive. So I'm ready to, I'm literally ready to roll up my sleeves. I'm starting to roll them up now, but I'm really ready to roll up my sleeves around what that work looks like. And I think that a lot of the direction that we're heading in Guided Pathways is part of, in the Guided Pathways redesigns is in part how we'll get there.
It is 2:35. I think Tish wants to ask one more question, but then after Tish's question, then we'll focus on the students, so the students can get their questions asked and answered. Go ahead, Tish.
Is this on?
Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
So, since I've been here at South, one of the things that impressed me about student services is that there appeared to be a strong vision in place, and there was a lot of work towards supporting and fostering that initiative, or that vision, both through initiatives like completion coaching, but also through professional development for the people in student services. And it's an impressive group on our campus. I'm wondering though, what your vision is for faculty. In your new role, you're going to be serving, not just student services, but obviously all different constituents. And I am selfish, I'm a faculty member, so I just want to know about us. But I'm curious, what vision do you have for how you plan to support faculty moving forward in your new role?
Thank you.
If you were to
Tish, when I started in the VP role, I started with a clear vision that I would carry into the president's role. When I started in the VP, and I remember in my interview for the VPSS role, I said that my vision is to make our student services division the best in the region. That when other colleges would wonder how to do something well, they would think, I wonder what South Seattle's doing. Let's go look and see what they're doing. And with that vision, when I talked with folks in our division about how we would make that real, a lot of what came up was people wanted more opportunities for professional development. And professional development meant and doing that meant that more than just those who were on the grants or those who had access to travel funds could go to conferences and be enlightened and come back. Professional development meant that everybody had the opportunity to do that. And so we developed Student Services Dev Day, which is the fourth Friday of every quarter that we close, so that the entire division, not just a skeletal crew or not just designees each quarter, could get access to professional development, but that's what everybody in the division was. If it was important enough for everyone, then it was important enough to give access to everyone to have that development. I like to think that what we did with Student Services Development Day positively influenced the establishment of faculty development days later on, so you're welcome. Sorry. But what I take with that and what I've learned and what I would take into the role as the president is that everyone values being invested in. Everyone values that. And everybody might need different things. Some might want more technical skills, some might want more pedagogical development, some might want other types of, some might want skills development outside of the work that they do because they want to stretch. But that everybody values being invested in and feeling important enough to be invested in. And I think that what I have seen in student services is the transformative impact that investing in our people can do. The reason why we are so fantastic, and we are, is because we decided early on that it was important to invest in everyone. And that these days are mandatory. People have to go, and if they're not there, they have to have a reason why they're not there. And it's, we haven't had to get super strict about it, but people know that it is absolutely expected that everybody's there. And in turn, it means that the development and what the development that we offer has to be of high value to everyone. The same would apply across the institution. There are many things that we could be doing together to make our institution better. And I think a couple of the lessons learned that I would apply to faculty in particular is first to listen and hear. What do you want? What do you need? What could, if money were no object, what would it be? If we had no money in the world, what could we do? You know, ask the question both ways. We have found, I think over the years, over 6 years, we've spent no more than, I'd say, about $5,000 on Development Day. Over 6 years, and that's 24 TEP days. And that's because a lot of what we also do is leverage the knowledge from within. So among our faculty, there are incredible experts in a lot of different areas. I saw Hana in here a second ago. Hana Gala is going to be, I believe, wait, we're confirmed for that, right? Okay, sorry, somebody had to give me the thumbs up. Hana's gonna come to Student Services and, oh, there you are. You magically appeared. For example, and do a customer service training about how to take our customer service to the next level in Student Services. But there are experts among us that should be recognized for what they know and what they can teach others, and then do that. And then we give them the ability to go and do that. So there's both development that we can bring in from the outside, but also development that we could offer to one another internally. You know, there are, we've brought in folks, safety and security, and has come in and done trainings with us. We've worked with a good examples of one, Mary Beans from the BAS programs did an adult learner training for Student Services. I mean, those are all examples of just things that we thought of because somebody knew there was a good content expert somewhere. And so I think, to ramble on and answer the question, I think really listening to what people want, looking for the experts within, asking people what we could invest in and bring from outside, and making it possible for people to access that development and that investment, I think is where I could take and elevate what we've been able to do in Student Services college-wide. Yeah.
All right, if we have students who have specific questions they want to ask.
Go ahead, Jeffrey. The awkward changeover. Hi.
I had a few other questions, but unfortunately, Mr. Johnson got the best of me, so my question, that had been taken. As somebody that's looking to apply or has submitted my application for next year's presidency of the USA committee here on campus, I have been very involved with them this current year, which explains why I've made it a point to attend all of the next presidential-elect meetings as well. One of the things that I would like to see, or a possible change, is the amount of communication from our upper level down, and not asking for the voices from the bottom to come up, and the transparency that transcends from that. Is there something that you, in your mind, as someone who's been here for some time, would like to start implementing as far as the commitment to the communication and transparency to the students, and being mindful of the fact that as somebody that is currently involved, I'm very vocal and involved, so that won't be necessarily something that would be hindering of us for next year. But, when we take into fact the cutting of 20 classes, and it wasn't going to be told to the students until the very last second, and the cutting of programs that many of the students still have not even been informed of, and the changing last year to block schedules, which the students did not get a voice in. Where does the commitment from the top come down before having to say from the bottom to come to the top?
That's a great question, series of questions there, Jeffrey. One of my strong points is communication. Before, and you may not know this, but before the shift to Office 365, we could more easily send all South emails and division emails. We had a division listserv, and it was, I would send emails out to this listserv regularly and communicate within our division on a very regular basis. And that died down after we made a shift to a new technology platform. And I've seen that, that reduction and how that's impacted the perception of transparency and clarity across the campus in the year and a half since we made that switch. And so I really am this morning with the group, I threatened to be a prolific communicator. I actually believe that opening the lines of communication is one of the most important things that you can, one of the best preventative measures that you can take to prevent morale decreases among groups. If people know that you'll communicate about things and they can expect communication from you, then it helps when difficult decisions are made. So I'll use an example and then I'll get to communicating with the students. In the budget issues, a year ago we were talking about making budget reductions, and when we were talking about making budget reductions a year ago, we were talking about personnel reductions. And in student services, I was often saying to people, I was giving budget updates on a regular basis, and I was often saying to people, I'm gonna give you a budget update even if I don't have anything, even if all I'm saying is, guess what, it still sucks. And I did. I would give people updates and I would say, you know, this is what we're talking about. I don't know what the specifics for our decisions are in student services, but when I do, you'll be the first to know. I will strive to give you as real-time information as possible. The impact of that was that, by comparison, student services folks experience less anxiety than other elements of, than other divisions of the college did around budgets, because we were continually communicating, even to say no updates, but we're still talking about budget. Now, translate that to how I would engage with students. I agree. I think asking for students to have to rally voices to raise concerns is exhausting for students. And especially when we know that there are things that are going to be impactful of students, we can be and need to be communicative around those up front. And so I would be very committed to regular communications with students and around, and in utilizing a lot of transparency in the budget development process. I didn't really get into it here, but I have a lot of ideas that build on directions we've been heading with the budget around how we could make it more of an engaging process that folks can have a part of and a voice in throughout, including students throughout the year, instead of starting in January or February and kind of trying to hightail it to through April to get a budget set up and figured out and problem solved and cuts made, to start much earlier in the year where we can start with conversations around our budget in the late fall and utilize that time to sort of build ideas and generate ideas for the next year. And then in winter, vet ideas and research impact of anticipated cuts. And then in spring, plan those cuts. And throughout that path, engaging students, engaging the college community around that process in a way that is meaningful and where people can see themselves reflected in the process, I think goes a long way in creating transparency and also in building trust, and would help in many cases to avoid the surprise decisions that have to get made when we're not constantly talking about the state of our budget and, oh my gosh, we didn't know that we had this shortfall to address and now we do. So I think that trying to shift the cycle to be more planful and talk about budget all year round will help us in times of enrollment issues like the class cancellations that you mentioned, but also in times of decisions around whether or not programs are going to be impacted, closed, or reduced. You know, I think that with students, and this was in part my answer to Dan, I think that sometimes we hear that we in leadership will hear, oh, well, we don't want to over communicate to people. People won't even read the emails if you send too many emails. Well, I keep seeing the opposite of that true, is that people are frustrated that they're not hearing anything or getting any communication. And so I feel like we've got to find what is the medium, and I would err on the side of being over communicative. I believe you can't communicate and repeat yourself enough, especially around important and difficult issues. So I would err on the side of being overly communicative so that people might get sick of the message, but at least they heard the message. And I think that that applies to students as well. I think we would be definitely intentional about how we communicate with students, the different ways that we communicate with students, and that that students don't only hear bad news, but that that they're hearing about opportunities and things like that, as well as hearing what's going on with the institution and the budget in different ways. All right.
Hello, hi. My name is Tam. I'm Vice President of the United Student Association. My question is, what is your opinion about making South Campus become a smoke-free campus?
Smoke-free campus. I am personally definitely supportive of that direction. I think we have a good model for how North Seattle campus has done it. They took some swift steps early on, and they're a good leader in the district that we could learn from. I think that the way that we're going about this, being with, I believe it's with students and with College Council, having the voice and the push coming from both of those areas together is a good way to get momentum behind this. And then it becomes the challenge of designing good policy to implement a smoke-free campus. We are in a different time. We are far more conscious of the impacts of smoking than we were 10 years ago even, and more the state has moved towards making it more possible for public places or public institutions to go smoke-free. I think that it provides a challenge. It means that that smokers will have to make adjustments in how they in their daily practice. I remember driving, I live in the North End and I live near Primera Blue Cross, and they have a smoke-free campus there. And so when you drive by, you see the folks in the scrubs. They take their smoke break out in front of the Primera sign, which is kind of a funny picture for a medical. They're in their blue scrubs smoking. But I think if with changes like that, I think we also do think about what do we do and what is the messaging for those who do smoke, and what can they do, where can they go, that is allowable off campus, or designate those areas and see to that, because these are individuals too who have to make a major change. And I think, especially for our staff who work here, that would have to make that change. Those are some deep conversations we would have to engage in. I wouldn't pursue it if it isn't where the campus wanted to go. However, that is my personal opinion, is I would be supportive as a now non-smoker, but it is definitely something that I would follow the lead of the campus voice and the campus will, and then work hard to design good policy and practices around it to make the transition one that is that mitigates pain and difficulty, but also that really maximizes the opportunity to address it as a health improvement for the community.
Thank you.
We're still looking for help for the Clean Air Task Force.
You're recruiting members for Clean Air Task Force?
Yeah. We come out on March 9th, and we're just looking for a few more vacancies in staff.
Okay, that was a recruitment call, so if you're watching this on the live stream too, you can look for your email.
Hi, Ms. Rosie.
Hi.
Ms. Regards to Inclusion and Diversity Officer for Student Government. This is my narrowing down to my second year here at South, so I definitely feel like I'm a part of the family here. And since you're almost kind of like a hometown favorite, you definitely know the South community just as good as I do, probably better. That we're a very family-oriented team. I feel like I can go anywhere on the campus. I've never been turned away if I have a question. It's always like I've been designated where someone can always help me. One question I have is that we, as a student who's been to the second year, I see myself be more engaged and I perform better when I have full-time teachers who are always here around. And definitely we're going through a budget crisis, budget deficit, and I know you're aware of these issues. What steps do you have toward implementing more full-time staff for us to definitely definitely brings a more family-oriented culture to our school that we really thrive off of?
Yeah. Thank you. Well, I think that there is some good prioritization work on that being done at the district level, and that bringing on more full-time faculty does does accomplish much of what you said, and that doesn't shortchange the positive impact that our part-time faculty also have on our students. There are many part-time faculty that develop really strong relationships and supportive relationships with students as well that just don't have the time to invest in the way that full-time faculty do. But we definitely look at, when you look at, and I had this conversation with the union leadership at lunch about part-time versus full-time and the value of that work, that it doesn't always, two part-time staff don't always equate a full-time staff because of the just the number of hours and the availability, and it's hard to replicate that experience with full-time staff. And I think as a college, we already have a strong focus and value on hiring more full-time faculty. I'm fully supportive of that and would want to continue to pursue that through our hiring practices. And I think that it's also something that is also valued across the district as well. But we hear it from students as well, that is something that is incredibly important. And so, yeah, thank you for asking that question, because it would be absolutely, I would continue in that priority as it's already been established.
Other questions?
Let me ask any more questions from the students before I give it to a non-student.
Do you think we should have the Sonics back as a basketball team?
Bring back our Sonics. Vanessa, tell your husband I said that. We also have community members in the room. I don't know if we want to make sure that they have an opportunity to ask. Kiana, did you have a question for me?
I'm not a student.
I know you're not.
But I came to the campus with a long work history in HR, working with unions, working with Sound Transit Board Advocates for phase one, and working with Seattle Housing now for 10 years as a volunteer. And so I understood earlier when the student was talking, personal community. But I think in those forms that you mentioned earlier, it might make sense at some point. Some of those forms might drill down on contracts and drill down on HR processes, because I think students don't understand the confidentiality of certain situations that administrators and leaders have to do. That you just can't fire someone just outright sometimes. You want to do that, but if they have a contract, there's a process that you have to follow. Otherwise, the institution faces liability and blowback. And I think that's hard for students that are going through experiences to say, well, how come we just don't fire this person? I think those forms that you mentioned might be a good opportunity from time to time with union input to talk about contracts and why certain disciplines and things take place and don't take place.
That's a great point, Alan. I think a lot of times when we're being shorthanded, we fault students for not getting how things work. That's just not how things work. Don't you understand that? And we don't take the time or opportunity to really to teach students, use that as an educational opportunity to explain that this is how things work. And then when you do it in a time of crisis, it feels like you are being apologist for the institution. And I think that to the extent we can teach each other, and we as staff and faculty also work to learn how stuff works here at the college, including union contracts, including other processes. I was having a conversation about conduct in an earlier session, helping faculty and instructional deans understand how conduct works as a way to help folks see how students move through that process with me when I do investigations. I think the more we can do that for one another, the better off we become as a college, because the more you take down those silos, but the more you create opportunities to connect and to empathize with one another. So thank you for that point.
This kind of transcends into enrollment, but one of the questions that was asked of USA and was posed to me as well is accessibility to South. You know, you've made the notion that we're up here on the hill, and when we look at our sisters, you know, Central is right in the heart of a Mecca, with a light rail, with a streetcar, and I believe half a dozen major bus lines that traverse, you know, the major metropolitan area, and north is right on the hub with a currently in construction pedestrian overpass to the new ST northbound lanes for Sound Transit for the train, and also a major, well, vastly much more major metropolitan area than what we find here at South. We were recently contacted by representatives of Perkins and Will, as well as ST3 representatives for the West Seattle onset, and the concerns that students have about accessibility to South. You know, Central is connected with the underground tunnel, North is connected with the new in construction light rail. Has there been any kind of conversations with you or with our president's office, or where is the dialogue with that, with how do we get students to school? You know, we currently only have 2 bus lines that serve our campus, and for the most part, Monday through Friday, save the holidays, it's generally pretty good. But on a holiday or on weekends, we've got issues. Or snow, you know, we're up here on the hill. We're kind of like the stepsister in a manner of speaking, to kind of put a metaphor onto it, but it's not user-friendly when it comes to someone that does not have a vehicle.
Right. Well, I can't speak to what conversations the president's office might be in with King County or others around transportation, but I do know that transportation has long been a challenge of ours. In fact, if you go back into our history of how we were founded, this site was selected because in the 70s, there was supposed to be a major thoroughfare that came up through the First Avenue Bridge up here. That was supposed to be a major thoroughfare that connected East and West Seattle, and it never came to be. It was there's an article somewhere that it's called it the highway to nowhere, that it never materialized, and yet South was sited here at that point. And so it has long been a challenge for us in terms of transportation. I think that we have, with varying degrees of success over the years, have students and staff alike have voiced our concern around transportation issues to King County, and have utilized our relationship to try to educate legislators on the challenges that we have here. We were able to successfully fight a reduction in service on, I think it was the 125 that was going to get massively reduced several years ago, that would have really cut off access to the college. We were able to successfully fight that off and mobilize there. It is something that for us continues to be a challenge because of our location. Now, the other part of your question was around enrollment, because of the risk that can have on enrollment. I think that because of that, all the more reason our programs and our work needs to be the best. Because if we are the best at what we do, if we have the best culinary program, if we have the best pre-engineering program, if we have the best of things, then we will and are a destination to students out there who want to come and do that thing. Now, that being said, there's even transportation concerns for those who are even within our neighborhoods in terms of getting here. And so I think that we continue to have to struggle through that. That being an outside entity and in King County Metro in terms of service, but I think being a vocal partner and a partner to Metro and advocate within the city and within the county around our needs is going to continue to be important as the other 2 colleges see this massive ease, making it massively easier to get there with the light rail system. So I don't know what that looks like, except I know that we have a good history of advocating for ourselves, and I think we would need to do that again and again and again, and make sure that our partners that are in local King County that have influence over those decisions understand our needs and understand who we are as a college and who it is that we serve.
Are there one more question?
Hi again. Okay, my question is, what is your plan in having more diversity in hiring faculty and staff?
Great. I really believe when it comes to hiring representative faculty and staff at the institution, that often people will often say, well, we need to hire the best. We need to hire the best in their field, the best at what they do. I fully believe that part of being the best possible candidate for a job is also that you are representative of the students that will serve. It's not this other factor that gets applied, and it's not the only factor that gets applied, that it is considered on balance with your academic background, with your training, with your success in your career, that it is all a part of that package of what makes a candidate the best fit for a position. I'm fortunate that I have seen our previous president, our current interim president, and other hiring managers around the campus really start to struggle with and lead around making better informed, diverse hiring decisions. And I think that over time we have seen slowly our representation start to improve. Now, South has the reputation of having, I think it was with our full-time faculty, we had the highest rate of faculty and staff, faculty of color, full-time faculty of color. But if we only compare ourselves to the rest of the system, then we are certainly doing a disservice to our students because our system isn't well representative of who our students are. And so for me, the bar is always what our student population is and how reflective are we of our student population. And I think there are many really effective ways, to do this well. And I think that with the HR leadership we have now, with the focus on diverse hiring practices, including the search advocacy process that we utilize now, we've got some good tools and some good people in roles to lead around this. And I would continue to be a really strong advocate for that as we move into, moving into a presidential role, but also as we move into the future of the college as well, looking at how we structure our programs and who we hire into them as well. Yeah.
So Rosie she's not done yet today. She has a lot more places to go. But, Rosie, would you like to have any final words?
Sure. First of all, thank you. Thanks for sticking through here. For those of you watching at home, thanks for paying attention for an hour and a half. I am, like I said, I am incredibly humbled and honored to be at this point in the process. I really want to do right by each and every one of you. I have worked with so many of you around the room in so many different ways. I mean, even over to Tom and the guys that are up in the booth over there. I can look around the room and think of the different connections I've made with many of you around here in our work over the last many years. I've been here long enough to see some of you leave and come back in other roles. I'm really the right person for the job. I am the leader that South has made over the last 18 years. I come from us. I come from what we have valued and built together, and I really believe that I would be really in a good position to lead us together with you into the next phase of who we are to be as a college. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. I really appreciate your time, your questions, and your engaging with me today.
So Rosie, because you know South, this is how we do things. So we give gifts and we get a little Celsius. I mean, it should be an honor, but
That's all right. Never mind the honor.
go with it and think of it. I mean, you might call it TED. I was thinking the TED movie, but maybe that's inappropriate. This concludes our open forum. So please, we really do need those comments. So if you have a written form, please finish it and put it in the box. Or if you need more time, just drop it off in the presidential office in a sealed envelope because we want it to remain anonymous. We also have the online comments ability, and we'll have that open until midnight on Wednesday, the 25th. And since this is our last presidential open forum, there's a bunch of people that I'd like to thank. I want to thank the IT and the web people at District, and also at Seattle Central College. They helped us, and especially here at our own college. our web and IT people, and Ty Swenson, the Director of Communications at PIO. He's been doing a lot of work. And then we wouldn't have streamlined or taped if it wasn't for our great people over at SCC TV. So we have Tom Butterworth and Dean and Rich, and they're fantastic. And they've been here for all of the forums at 9 o'clock. Well, first of all, they came a week ahead of time to test the equipment. Then they were here at 9 o'clock in the morning to make sure everything's working and so forth. So again, thank you so much for attending. And please fill out those comment forms. Thank you.